All right, everybody, welcome. I'm Michael Black. If we haven't met before, I think there's a few of us who I haven't, or a few of you I haven't met. I'm just going to go over and do an introduction really quick, and then we will go into the agenda, and then we'll talk about public input. We did get a little bit, so I won't go over the agenda right now, but we're going to get to the meat of the meeting in just a few minutes, and I'll explain kind of what we're doing, what we're hoping to accomplish, how I think we can accomplish that. But as we go through, we're pretty open, or this process can be pretty open to modification as we're going through, but I'll talk about that in a few minutes. So again, my name is Michael Black. I'm the director of Ashland Parks and Recreation. And this is a committee that we put together to look at some recommendations from the RVMBA on trails on Ashland Parks and Recreation property, some on city property in the watershed, and one in Lithia Park. And if you don't mind, if Rick or Leslie, our elected commissioners, are okay with it, I will just go ahead and moderate these meetings, and instead of going through and electing a chair and vice chair and all that. This is not as meaty or is as going to be as long term as the Trails Master Plan Committee was that a lot of you served on. So, and then as far as introductions go, what I will do and what I found works in these situations is if we just kind of do a tag thing. So I'll pick somebody to introduce. When you're done, pick somebody else until we get through everybody, okay? So I'm gonna go to my left on my screen anyways. Jeff McFarland, you wanna go? And just give a quick introduction, and then we'll get into discussing the topics of the day.
All right, thank you, Michael. Yeah, hi, everybody. I'm Jeff McFarland. I used to work for the Parks Department. I was the Forestry and Trails Supervisor for many years and enjoyed working there on the trails. And I've been retired now, and but still in the Valley. And so happy to be a part of this group here. How about Luke Brandy? Bonsai.
Hello, I'm Luke Brandy. I'm on the Forest Lands Commission, professional forester, born and raised in Ashland, yada yada. Anyway, I love trails. Awesome. Glad to be on this committee. Great to see all of you. My bad, I didn't play tag. Dave Chapman.
Hello. I've been on the first two trail commission or trail meetings, and trail user, work on the trails a lot, try to flag new trails, explore. That is all. And who we got? Mr. Plaid Shirt, I don't know your name. With the beard.
That's Casey Botts.
That's got to be me with the beard. Yeah, Casey Botts, Rogue Valley Mountain Bike Association. Have two daughters who use the trails frequently in Ashland, and that's what motivated me to get involved with helping for this trails plan that we'll go over today. Oh, hello, Jason Minica.
Jason Minica, work for Ashland Parks. I'm the Forestry, Trails, and Open Space Supervisor now. So I took over when Jeff retired. So glad to be a part of this. How about Torsten?
My name is Torsten Heike. I'm the Chief Muckety Muck at Ashland Woodlands and Trails Association. I've worked with a lot of you on various trails at various times. And Rick Lant.
Park Commissioner since 2010, and before that from 98 to 2002. Avid bicyclist. If you've ever cut me off, I'm sure you've seen my smear.
You just pick somebody else to go, Rick.
Oh, I will pick someone I don't know, Brooke Hanson. Hi, Brooke.
Hi, Rick. Nice to meet you.
Nice to
So
meet you.
I'm Brooke Hanson. My husband and I own True South Solar, which is a local solar company located here in Ashland. I have two kids, 4 and 12, and we're all just love this community and love the trails. We mountain bike, we hike. I used to run till I got old and can't do that anymore. So just happy to be a part of this group and contribute in any way I can. So good to be here. And I'll pass it to Leslie.
Thanks. Hi, Brooke. Hi, everyone. I'm Leslie Eldridge. I'm new compared to Rick, of course, Ashland Parks and Rec Commissioner. Also sit on the Forest Lands Commission. I've got 2 boys, 1st and 3rd grade, and our whole family loves to mountain bike in the watershed. And I run, very involved in the local running community and hike, and really excited to be a part of this. Thanks. Who's left? Sil.
Hi, I'm Priscilla Franco, Sil Franco for short, and I'm on the Forest Lands Commission, and I love the trails here. I mostly walk, occasionally ride, and put in a lot of miles on these trails. My career was in the Forest Service, and I've been involved with big trail projects, like I was board of directors with the Pacific Crest Trail Association, and small with the Mount Shasta Trail Association. So I know what volunteers and group efforts can do, and it's awesome when it comes to trails. And so Ian, I don't think we've heard from you yet.
That is true. My name's Ian Cropper. I was born and raised in Ashland. Just moved back about a year ago from Colorado, and I have been spending probably a fair bit more amount of time on my feet on these trails than wheels lately. But they're the trails that I grew up on. I was amazed to see all these outstanding trails that appeared in between the time that I lived here and since moving back. It's just really exciting to see, and it's something I want to get my wife and my kids more involved in. So here we are. Chances are some of you may have come in contact with a Cropper niece or nephew or brother, sister or something, but there are a fair number of us Croppers around here. We just love this area and I'm happy to be here.
Okay, and I think we have Leah left here.
Yeah,
Hi, everybody. I am Leah Richards, and I'm the staff support I do the GIS and mapping stuff. And I was active on the second Trails Subcommittee, the most recent one. And that was quite a process. So here we are again. My husband is an avid mountain bike and bicyclist, and he loves the Wonder Trail. So he's always riding up Wonder as many times as he can every week. And my oldest son also likes to come when he comes back for visits. He'll jump out on the trails too. Yeah. So, and I haven't been back trail building since the last time I got poison oak really bad and had to do steroids because my eyes swelled shut. So I don't do lower trails anymore.
All right, thanks everybody. Dorinda, do you want to jump on really quick and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, everybody. I'm Dorinda Cottle, and I'm staff support for this meeting. And I've worked for Parks and Rec for about 17, 18 years. And prior to COVID, I had my office in the park, and I did a lot of cycling on my lunch hours. And I love the trails, and I love our parks, and I'm happy to be here.
Okay. I think we've gone through everybody. Have we missed anybody? Mike Gardner is here. He's watching the show as an observer. But have we gone through have we missed anybody who's participating in the committee? Okay. All right, well, thanks for everybody. I really appreciate you taking the time to do that so that we're all clear who everybody is. Now, I'll just point out just one thing. There's a few of us on here who will not be part of the recommendation body, the group that will be making the recommendation, and that's your staff support. Dorinda just mentioned that she was staff support. Jason, Minica, myself, and Leah are also staff support. We're here to help facilitate, move us through this, and accomplish the goal that we'll talk about in just a minute. Ian is also here to help out. Ian isn't a member of the board, but I believe he's here to help present today. The rest of you will have an opportunity to weigh in and comment and debate and ultimately make a recommendation on the presentations that are going to take place. So let's move forward so we can talk about that. So I don't have any additions or deletions to the agenda unless anybody else has any. I'm going to move on past that. I will state that we don't have an end time for this meeting. I am hoping to end the meeting at 4 p.m. And we are going to have more than one meeting, but I'll talk about that in a second. But today I'd like to end it at 4 p.m. That gives us an hour and a half, and we're moving pretty good right now. So on public input, we did have one letter come in from Jim Falkenstein, and he, I don't know if everybody saw that. If you didn't, we're going to send it out to you. You can read it at your leisure, but that was the public input that we received. I don't feel like I need to read that into the record. Everybody can read that whenever you have a chance. We don't have anybody else signed up for public input. We only have one other person on watching, and Mike Gardner, if you want to give public input, you're welcome to now. Otherwise, we'll move on with the rest of the meeting. Okay, I think we'll move on then. All right, so let's talk about what we're here to do. Oh, Mike, did you want to make a comment or?
No, I didn't. Sorry. I was muted. I couldn't talk. So I'm just here to observe. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Mike. And Mike is the chair of the Parks Commission. He's here observing, and we have two commissioners who are participating. All right. So what we're here to do is to review suggested changes for trails in the watershed and on parks property that have been proposed by RVMBA. Thankfully, Casey put this together, or the RVMBA put this together, and it's pretty well organized. And today we're going to start going through that and start looking at all of the proposals, I should say, that RVMBA has put forward. A lot of these are improvements to trails. Most of what we're going to be looking at isn't going to require a change in the master plan. We're going to be looking at these things and looking at potential modifications, and eventually somebody will have to approve the changes, whether it's the city council or the Parks Commission. The Parks Commission is a body that's separately elected and runs the commissioners are a body that are separately elected and run the Ashland Parks and Recreation Commission, which controls and manages all of the parks and open space in Ashland. There was some information in the document that was given by RVMBA. There's a little bit of confusion on Siskiyou Mountain Park. The reality on Siskiyou Mountain Park is that it is Ashland Parks and Recreation property with an easement held by Southern Oregon Land Conservancy. We control and manage that property. And somebody might have a question, well, what's the difference between owning and control and management? Well, we're still part of the city of Ashland. So the city of Ashland actually shows up on the deed for all of the properties. But because of the charter for the city of Ashland, once properties are designated as parks or open space, the parks commissioners then have control, which is a legal term, and management of those properties. So it's close to ownership, but it's not technically ownership. The city council can't make decisions on parks property, and parks commissioners are the only ones who can do that. And it goes the other way as well. We don't make decisions on city property. Now we do, however, help out on trails in the watershed on city property. We do a lot of trail management on city property, and we work with Chris Chambers a lot back and forth between parks and the city for forestry as well. Jason does a lot of that work, but we also do a lot of work together. They ask us to help manage the trails, but ultimately the trails, and this is the way it is currently anyways, ultimately parks commissioners don't approve trail modifications on watershed property. However, we are working on an MOU with the city where that could potentially be evaluated by the commissioners, and in the future there could be a process where all trails on city or parks property go through the Parks Commission. At the end of this process, which we'll talk about, well, I guess now would be a good time to talk about the process. So the process would be that this group, which is really an ad hoc committee because it's brought together to accomplish one purpose. And once that purpose is completed, the group is completed. The purpose is to make recommendations to whoever is going to have the decision-making authority on whatever properties they are for whatever proposals at the end of this this process. So what we're looking for from this group is to listen to the presentations, talk about the changes. There's a group here that knows a lot about these trails, and we expect there to be discussion and debate on whether or not the proposals should happen, shouldn't happen, maybe some changes, alternatives. But we're here to listen and to get to a decision or a recommendation on each one of the proposals. We're not going to skip over any of them. All of them are going to need to have a recommendation at the end of the day. Casey Botts, and he may have help, but Casey with RVMBA, although he's also sitting as a member of the group, will give a presentation on the proposals and start the conversation. Now, my thought in going through this, I thought it would make sense if we met as a group, listened to the presentations, had preliminary questions and answers. It's kind of like a public meeting, have preliminary questions and answers, break from the meeting, and in between this meeting that we're having here and the next one we have on Zoom, take time to go out and to look at the changes that are being proposed, find out, what your feelings are, the physical, get, hands on, feet on, wheels on, whatever the area where the changes are being proposed, and then come back and debate it at the next meeting and make a recommendation on the trails that you had a chance to look at in between the two meetings. Now, originally I thought we could do this in 2 meetings, but we probably can't. Probably are going to have more than 2 meetings. So what I would suggest is today that we go through and we give Casey an opportunity to go through these proposals in whatever order he wants to, or RVMBA wants to, and see where we get to by about 3:45, so about an hour. And that's including questions and answers. Let's try not to debate them right now. If we can do information gathering first and then debate them afterwards, and then make the recommendation after the debate, we can see how much we can get through today, and then that will give us an idea of how many meetings we're going to have. Any objections to a process like that? Okay, so as far as the on-site visits, I would propose that you do those either on your own or as small work groups, but not as the committee. We have to notice these meetings when these meetings take place. So we would appreciate it just from a workload standpoint. If you want to go together, get a few members together and go up and take a look at these things, that's totally fine. But all of us together at the same time as a group doing it causes extra work for our staff. And I'd appreciate it if you just did it in a less organized manner so that we don't have to call together a meeting to go up and look at those things. And as far as the timing goes, we can work as quickly as you want, or we can go as slow as you want. I know nobody probably wants to go slow, but we're committed to this process now. We've started it. We want to finish it. So what I'd like to do is at the end of the meeting today, talk about how long you need to do your investigations, and then when the next meeting could be. We will turn around as quick as you guys want to, and because you're going to be doing most of the work until the end when we write this thing up. So we can probably put together meetings as quick as you want to have them. Okay. Commissioner Lott?
I think the idea of going up in small groups makes a lot of sense. I personally don't even know where all these trails are. So I'd rather, but and it seems like there should be some more, a little bit more organized and just say, throw it out there and do it. So does anyone have an idea of how that would happen, or is it, or you? I mean, I don't even have contact number information for a lot of you here. So how's that supposed to happen?
So if I can just jump in, and then anybody else who wants to can as well. We did receive GPS information for where all the trails are located, and Leah, I'm not sure if you were able to get those and make those into a map or not, but we can, with the help of Casey and the RVMBA, we can provide information where these are. As far as organizing yourselves, the purpose of doing work groups is you can actually meet and not be official. So you have to organize those work groups outside of this meeting though. So what I could do, and Dorinda, we can get you all the contact information for each of the members. And if you can organize yourself outside of the meeting, that I would really appreciate that. It would make it a lot cleaner as far as public meetings go and everything. So, but we can get you GPS coordinates, maps, things like that. So any other suggestions?
I was just gonna say that once the meeting's over, I can identify some dates that I would be available, and whoever can meet me can come do that. But it would be easiest for me to, throw out 3 or 4 dates and stick with those to hopefully get a group, rather than meeting, 15, 12 times on everyone's individual schedule. I think from our point of view, we'll probably just try to do a handful of dates where we could go around to different or whatever that works for people.
Okay, so again, we're talking about doing these in work groups, so we don't want to make assignments in this meeting or anything like that, but you could throw out the dates at this meeting, or you could email everybody. We will still follow up with everybody's contact info so that you can have that, and we'll also follow up with the GPS. I think Torsten got the GPS in advance, and maybe some others did as well, so it is available. You didn't? Oh, sorry. Well, Torsten asked for it. so let's see. As far as that was pretty much it. I think it can be that simple. I don't think it needs to be super difficult. If I'm wrong, let me know. But I would approach this like I said. We get a presentation, we ask questions, get us informed as we need to, educate ourselves outside of the meeting as well with the site visit, and then come back and debate and with follow-up questions, and then debate and to make a recommendation and move through each one of those. You don't have to finish one before you move to the next. You can do several at the same time. So, okay. Well, let's move forward and get Casey on the spot and presenting so we can start this process. Any
All
objections?
right.
Okay.
I'm gonna try to do a screen share here. Let's see. Can you guys see my screen yet?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I already introduced myself. I'm going to kind of just give a quick background on where this came from. So this current iteration of the RA board, it's actually had some turnover, but myself and a couple of others have been on since September 2018. In that time, we've had time to make observations, notice trends, and collect some data from the trail system, not only here, but across the Rogue Valley. This is just kind of one piece of what we do. You know, obviously there's a lot of players in the watershed, and then there's also other trail systems, BLM, XPass, that kind of stuff. But what we're just noticing all across the region is all kinds of trail use, and a lot of that's from COVID. You know, nationwide trends of people wanting to spend more time outdoors and socially distance activities and things of that nature. We've also noticed a new demographic that's interested in riding here in Ashland and beyond, another nationwide trend, and that's the family demographic. A lot more kids get into mountain biking and trail use from an earlier age than previous. We've had a lot of contact from the Ashland and the Chamber of Commerce in regards to mountain biking and, well, outdoor recreation, with mountain biking being a piece of that as a possible economic driver in town. And then we've had just growth in our statewide mountain bike league for youth. Our local team has doubled its ridership in the force since that team started, and statewide the participation of 6 through 12 has increased by 5 times. So when we started to see what was happening, we realized that there were the bones are great, and the stuff that's happened from the original master plan and the way the trails are divided up amongst users is a testament to, you know, AWTA and the people who've worked on that. So this is not meant to replace that, say that stuff wasn't, you know, a great start. But we're just trying with the current trends and fill in where we see gaps. So the timeline, I'll go through this, but we did create the trails plan last November and submitted it at the beginning of this year. And it was put on the goals list for the Parks Commission. And here we are. Oops. So my goals today are to clearly explain 6 proposals directly affecting AP. I was a little unclear. Now it's been cleared up a little more. Some of the projects, like stuff on the Imperatus property, you know, where it has more City of Ashland input than maybe something in Siskiyou Mountain Park. I'll just get direction from Michael or anyone who has an understanding of if we should be reviewing items like that. And then hope to get feedback on each proposal, including questions, comments, concerns, and discussion. And then I guess we already talked creating time visits, and that'll be a more informal process, having to notice the meeting, like Michael said. Okay, so in the trails plan, there's 10 proposals. The ones with asterisks, I'm not planning on covering today unless I get direction from Michael or anyone else that I should be presenting these today. The ones I'm not going to present are private landowner opportunities, because those are have themselves at this time, and that would involve public land. The acid castles, we don't have a proposal for that area at this time either. Variables over on the west side of the watershed there. The Imperatrice property would have to go through a lot more discussion with the city in terms of change of use, things in that nature. And also the Imperatrice property is in the trails master plan. So I think, the opportunity to bring that back to the table in some form with the work that's already been done, the original committee at some point would be great to get that discussion going. And then the water line, pedestrian bike separation, kudos to everybody involved to make that happen, prove it, and anxiously awaiting my AWTA email of when construction will start on that trail. So I can hopefully get involved with that.
Hey Casey, really quick. I just want to make it clear that we can review in this process, we can review any trail proposal whether it's Ashland Parks and Rec or city. We do have city representatives as well. Chris couldn't make it today, but at the end, what I was saying is some of the decisions, some of your recommendations might go to the Parks Commissioners, and some of them might go to the Forest Lands Commission, or however that's going to work going forward. But you don't need to limit yourself. I'll just tell you that.
Okay, that makes sense. I think I'll still order them with the 6 I had planned on, and if we have time, we can talk about the ones I didn't. But I think those ones are still a little more in discussion mode than actual consideration for approval mode. A lot more. So today I'd like to go over Lithia Park Trail, Allison reroute, Siskiyou Mountain Park Trails, South Ashland Climb Descend Trails, Pioneer Street Mountain Bike Promenade, and a Lower Wonder Bailout Trail. A note about the Lower Wonder Bailout Trail, it's my understanding that the land we want to go through might be for the future wastewater treatment center, but I want to make it clear that we're proposing temporary trail. We're okay with 5, 10, 15 line. If that becomes a facility, then that we would lose that trail. But our goal in presenting is that we can still use land, even if it's slated for development late on the line. And then I also want to recognize Southern Oregon Land Conservancy. We've been in touch with Paul from the Conservancy about this plan. I want to make sure that they are kept in the loop % on anything we do on land that they're involved with.
Sorry to interrupt, Casey. Am I the only one that is like having the audio is a little on and off? I was wondering if it's just me. If you wouldn't mind, it might be better if you turn off your video. If that's you're kind of going in and out for me.
So if I click stop video.
Yeah, usually your bandwidth gets better and your audio improves.
You can still see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, we'll try this. Okay, so I'm gonna continue. I can't see any of you right now, so just yell out if something else happens. Okay, so each proposal addresses one of these 7 factors or multiple. And this is kind of where it really gets into what we want to see changed. We talk about user safety, the water line, pedestrian reroute, stuff like that. Trail sustainability, getting rid of trails that are unsustainable, working on decommissioning certain routes or trails, almost like a exchange of like a newer sustainable trail and decommissioning some, lesser used paths that aren't currently permitted. Neighborhood connectivity, that's a big one. Dispersing users, reducing car trips to trailheads, and really kind of getting usage spread out. Lack of beginner trails. Ashland set up really nicely for intermediate to advanced riders, but we don't have a lot of beginner trails for kids, families, or people new to the sport. And that also creates an equity issue of people not being able to drive way up high into the watershed. They might not have the right car, or it might be intimidating to drive in the woods. So having accessible trails from town that are beginner trails. Environmental impact, like we talked about, kind of reducing car trips by creating a more comprehensive network and getting rid of rogue trails or trails that are deemed unsustainable that have been either user created a lot of times, like up on where Wonder was, there was a lot of homeless use of those trails that just created some more impacts. Tourism. So I want to be clear that RVMBA isn't necessarily promoting tourism in its current state. We recognize that some people in the city and the Chamber of Commerce would like to promote our trails, but we're not comfortable doing that with our current system. We're kind of tapped out in terms of use on the current system. So until we have a way to disperse users and get some more mountain bike infrastructure, RVMBA isn't going to support any big tourism campaigns. I think we would be supportive if we had a good plan and means to be prepared for what more advertising and more outreach to get people here to use trails would do for the town. User experience, obviously, you want people to feel safe. You want things to be well signed, and you want people to have a good time, not get hurt, things of that nature. So I'm going to go through some of the proposals at this time. Are there any questions kind of on how we developed this document and how it's organized? Okay. So I'm going to try to go through these so we have some time to discuss. So I'm not going to go through each one in massive detail. I'm just going to kind of lay them out there. And Michael, do you think it's better to lay out all of them at once or go through one and discuss it? Or what's your recommendation in the interest of time?
I think I would go through each one and then answer questions about each one. And
Okay.
We'll just get to as many as we can today.
Okay, great. So hopefully everyone's had a chance to review the packet or the proposal. The first, I'm actually reading directly from that. Alice in Wonderland climb trail and pedestrian bike separation. This would involve actually a lot of players because Alice in Wonderland crosses through Forest Service, City of Ashland, and private easements all the way up and down the trail. So instead of just writing it off as, oh, we can't do something because there's so many pieces, our idea was to fix what we can and work on the other parts as opportunities arise. So there's a good portion of city land that's currently open to bikes below BTI trail, between BTI and the entrance to Bandersnatch off Ashland Loop Road. I'm going to scroll to this map here. So if you can see my arrow, kind of there's a lot of spaghetti, but right in this area before the beginning of the road where the road turns from dirt to pavement, it's just kind of a steep rutted double track that we would propose rerouting into a switchback climb trail up that knob to, number one, reduce the impact of a big road cut that no one uses and a drainage problem. And number two, it would remove bikes from Ashland Loop Road because they'd have a way to climb up off the road, which is the optimal thing to do if you're riding a bike. And this trail would continue up. And right now, Alice is currently bi-directional, but it's not the safest route because people coming down from White Rabbit parking lot carry high speeds. It is luckily open, but it's still not ideal to have. If we built a climbable trail, we wouldn't want to mix users. So we're proposing a separate climb trail that could be parallel to the current downhill section where people are riding a BTI.
Excuse me, Casey.
Potential trail.
Question. Let's. Are you guys okay with taking questions? Casey, are you okay with taking questions as they come up, or do you want to wait till the end of each one?
No, I'm good. I'm good. I want to make sure everything's clear for everyone. So if there's questions, I'm okay. I just can't see, so just feel free to interrupt and let me know.
I'll let you know. Torsten, did you still have a question?
Yes, I did. So this is actually one of those places where a GPS file would be really helpful. I'm pretty familiar with that area because we tried to route a downhill mountain bike trail through that area. And it was pretty steep, and there was some question whether it would be viable as a downhill trail. And so when I think about it as an uphill climbing trail in that narrow area between Bandersnatch and Jub Jub, making it climbable seems really challenging. So I guess my question is what kind of climbing slope would you think you'd end up with? What kind of grade?
So I kind of just envision, I'm not going to be able to give you a number or like a quantitative answer to that, but I've walked it, and you know, this is where it's going to make more sense for me to go walk this with people and look at ideas rather than get into the actual science of trail building. That you're better than I am on that. I have walked it, and I do think there is opportunities. I mean, where Bandersnatch is right there is climbable for bikes, I believe, and it's on the same sort of grade. But I do have a GPS file of that I can send you as well. And I think there's ways to make it happen. But I'm not going to be able to get into like the technical aspects. These are more of like my strengths lay more in the concepts, and I think this committee together can go walk those things and then draw from your expertise on if it will work or not. Anything else? Can I continue?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so once we get up to this knob area, there are potential trail crossings of Bandersnatch. I don't personally, the sight lines are good, which is kind of my first thing I look at when you talk about trail crossings, is that, are there good sight lines? Can you design the trail in a way where speed won't override safety? Obviously you want to cross a trail as little as possible to not disrupt other users, and there also could be a way to come around the other side of Bandersnatch here, but this is kind of what we came up with for now. So then this just continues. Eventually you hit easements and US Forest Service boundary. So we wouldn't be able to split any trail use there because of the issues that come with easements and the US Forest Service. But for the city part, this would offer a climbable loop. So keeping more traffic off the Ashland Loop Road. I'd also, envision making this multi-use, like what Torsten said about, or sorry, not multi-use, multi-directional. What Torsten said about kind of steeper switchbacks, and also lends itself nicely to lower speeds. So it would basically present another loop option to come down this way in a safer manner than now, because right now it's just a steep, gravelly fire road. Part of this also, I'd love to see someone come out and give recommendations on how we could decommission or rehab that current road. If you've been up there, you kind of know what we're talking about. But I think that would lend itself to good, like a restoration component of this project.
AC, can we ask some questions?
Yeah, sure. That's all I have to present on this one. That's probably about the amount of time I'm going to do on each one for presenting. And then
Sorry, I missed your guys' hands there. I'm not sure who was first, but Luke, why don't you go first? And then Leslie.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation on this one, Casey. So where it says potential trail crossings, is that Griffin Trail that it's crossing? And then also, is it going to cross that deep gully that's the current trail, the downhill portion for mountain bikes? And is that what you meant by decommissioning, or is it the gully area that would be decommissioned? I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
So the way I can describe it is if you are coming downhill and BTI goes to the west or your left, you would continue to the right or straight. Just beyond that, the trail turns from trail into a double track and then immediately kind of almost enough room for a car to drive up. And that probably continues for about maybe 100 yards. And that area right above the Jub cutoff is the area I'm talking about. As far as where this crosses, I believe this is still Bandersnatch. This one's Torsten, you might want to chime in here, but I think this is all crossing Bandersnatch here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
It looks like it also crosses Alice several times.
So when I walk this, it might just be the way that the GPS is, but I did stay off of Alice mostly. And that was the goal, to keep Alice as kind of the downhill component. Right here is where the BTI cutoff is. So north or above, right where my arrow is, would just naturally see way less traffic because most people are accessing this trail to ride BTI. So you're going to have more high-speed bikes and more of the issue we're trying to solve in this region, where you can see the trail strays well away from that right here. It would rejoin Alice or terminate at Alice up in this flatter area. So there would be plenty of sight lines and ways to enter Alice here without being on a narrow sight line or a steep area.
All right, Commissioner.
Yeah, thanks. So the portion of the trail that runs parallel to Alice, sort of on that wide ridge where we've got a lot of erosion and a lot of it is open. Are we envisioning some sort of like, we would put a whole bunch of delineate these trails more fully? Or I'm trying to imagine what the user experience would be, and it would be like both trails would be within the sight of each other, 30 feet apart and highly delineated with felled trees or things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that that makes trails of not multi-use on one trail, but separate trails of single use close to each other is the fact, like, it has to be an open area. And that area, you're right, you can see everything there, which I think is the only way it would work. If you have a bunch of, manzanita or brush with reduced sight lines, it's going to be an issue. But that's that area would probably need some new signage if it was going to have more use. Currently, there are signs. And one thing to note on this too is it's already open and signed to mountain bikes on the map. Improvement, involve cutting new trail, but the area itself and that trail is already signed and used for mountain bikes. It's just not optimized because of the grade, and we, that's where we want to make the changes, is kind of finding a way to make that already mountain bike legal trail more usable, to kind of shift at least some of the folks from the loop road.
Okay. Torsten.
Yeah, so I have a question about the south end of that depiction of your trail. Yeah, down there. So I think you and I had this discussion about a previous plan that Parks and Rec and AWTA had, for which we got easements on private properties, and the routes, there were parallel pedestrian and mountain biking routes to replace the existing Alice on private property. And I realize you haven't gotten to the private property sections yet, but the changes start occurring on Parks property. And so your trail proposal would cut diagonally across those trails. And I think it would be, again, helpful if we had the GPS file and then we could overlay it with the previously thought out plan. So we could kind of reconcile those two, or kind of see if they are compatible.
Yeah.
We can try to do that for the next meeting.
Yeah, I have not, I know we've talked about it, but I don't think I've seen, I haven't seen what you had worked out with Parks in the past. But like overall, it's trying to accomplish the same goal. So like I said, the concept is, I think, the same, the goal is the same.
So in order to do that, I'll need to get the plan from Jeff or Jason or Torsten or whoever has that. So Jeff, why don't you go ahead?
I just wanted to add in a couple of comments for informational purposes at this time. And that is simply, a lot of you know this already from working with us on some of these past trail projects in that area, but there's been we've gotten some geology reports in the past before some of these trails were made, like the BTI reroute. And one of the concerns that geologists had were head walls that we needed to avoid, which caused us to not be able to cut over sooner than where the trail starts cutting off Alice now. Another, I know Chris isn't here right on this meeting right now, but there's if you could scroll down again a little bit, Casey, or up a little bit, sorry, on the previous map. The area, you know, where the big gut is, the big drainage chute that goes down, that's been a real head scratcher for years for many people. But I guess on this, it'd be to the northwest from there. It goes down the hill, Jub cuts across there. And then Lower Alice circumvents this area that's called the Bronca unit, which is, according to the geologists, the most unstable unit geologically in the Ashland interface. So even though Jub has cut across the top of there for years, when we discussed possible reroutes and switching back and forth through that gut area that you're pointing at right now, the discussion was to be very careful not to send any more drainage than already is going down in that Bronca from the ridge. So all the drainage we knew had to go the other way towards the loop road. And then when the Bandersnatch was made, which is on the other side of that gut, the switches that came farther over to the east there were all pretty much as far over towards this other draw as the geology would let them come. So those are kind of a marker on that side. And then the ridge and drainage not being able to go the other way from that ridge where that gut is. And I know they had Marty Main who had possibilities of trying to create these huge drain dips and check dams down through that gut at one time. That was proposed to try to be part of a possible reroute, but there's several issues in there geologically that have been addressed in the past. And I think that the trails have been developed till now are improvements, but that's still a big challenge to try to look at that narrow area where that gut is. And there's not much room in there to go because of the geology boundaries that we know of in there as well. So I'd like to go with you in there when you go up there, and I could show you where they've pointed those things out in the past from the reports.
No, that's good info. My question would be, I guess, overall, I mean, to me, if you got someone in there to rehab that road cut, wouldn't that be a net positive? Like, its current status is what seems like it's causing the drainage issues. Is that not true?
Yeah, I think I've always liked the idea to see if some improvement could be made in there for sure. It was pointed out that the erosion that's happening there is passive erosion, not active erosion, because even though it's eroding out of the gut, it spreads back out on the ridge, on the flat at the base of it, and it the geologist classified it as passive erosion because of that. But I think it's from a user experience, it's not fun to ride down that gut, and I don't think it's an uphill. So I think it's worth taking another look at for sure.
Okay, we've got a few other questions here. Commissioner Lant, did you still have a question?
No, thank you.
Okay, Torsten?
Yeah, actually, this is less of a question and more of a comment that might be helpful. But so Jeff and I and a few others sort of addressed this issue when Nathan Riddle had mapped out a trail in that area. It was supposed to be a downhill mountain biking trail. You can still see his flags out there. And then the next process was going to be to get an engineering geologist to sort of evaluate what we'd have to do. And I think we got, Jeff, you might remember better, but I thought we got some initial comments from the engineering geologist about what had to happen. And I just remembered thinking, wow, that's a lot of work and a lot of steel and rebar, and then it became less of a priority. And some of that history and institutional knowledge is fading, I think, but might be good to resurrect.
Yeah. So so we'll get a chance to discuss this further, and Jeff, we'll make sure you get out there with Casey and Torsten and everybody, so you can get that knowledge out there. Jason, you too, and everybody else. But if there's no more questions on this one, why don't we move on so we can at least get to 2 or 3 of these today.
All right. So the next one would be that area on the other side of the watershed, Lower Wonder bailout trails. One thing we identified, I personally love riding up Lower Wonder, but once you commit to Lower Wonder, you're in for a 1,000-foot climb, which significantly reduces the number of mountain bikers who can use that trail. So this project would essentially, work on connectivity, user experience, and adding some beginner trails. We have proposed 2 possible bailouts. One would come through the quarry. There's already a deer path. I think people already use this. Sometimes there's trees covering it, like branches, sometimes there aren't. But this magenta line comes down to the quarry. And really what this does is it just offers a nice 8-minute climb, perfect for a kid or beginner to kind of practice a couple uphill switchbacks on the existing trail, mellow out on this climb, and then ride back down. And then for a more advanced rider who wants to get a fitness workout, but for example, like my neighbor is an on-call doctor. So when he rides, he needs to stay low in the watershed. Something like this would allow him to get a quick ride in just by having a legal signed trail through that quarry back to the gate, which is down here. that's the first one. I think, again, this is going to be another discussion of you know, erosion and possible geology issues, but having a second trail higher up just to add more climbing, but stay on city land and best utilize some of the city land and kind of just traverse the same area as Lower Wonder already traverses, you know, in the same style, and then crossing wide to, you know, help with contouring the slope here. I'm assuming this would be the biggest issue from the people who are familiar with the erosion issue in the area, and then crossing back into the quarry. So 2 short trails that would allow for a looped system on Lower Wonder rather than committing to the 3-mile, 900-foot climb, which is just not accessible for everybody. So that's all. I mean, I guess that's all I need to say on that one if we want to get straight to any questions.
Okay, I don't see any hand. Oh, Torsten, you win. Yeah, the first one.
I actually like this idea. And there's the biggest challenge, obviously, I think, is the water treatment plant. And I checked.
Forgot to mention that, probably.
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. I forgot to mention that these are being proposed as temporary plans, but again, there might be other rules around that I'm not aware of.
No, I think you did. I think you did mention that as a temporary solution. I particularly like I guess the magenta one. That seems like an easy one if it were temporary. I know they're doing work up there already, and they do work periodically in preparation for the water treatment plant. So you might be running into that. And on the blue at the higher end, we actually looked at routing Wonder over there at Chris Chambers' suggestion. And then we ran into his ponderosa pine plantings from a long time ago, or Marty Main's ponderosa pine plantings. And it is very unstable soil. And so we chose not to route Wonder there, just FYI.
Okay. My other, you might be familiar with this idea, coming around the backside down this knob, and then there's already deer trails or user created trails back here from a long time ago. I think a lot of them go to old homeless camps, and then coming back into this area. It's not proposed like that, but do you see that as an option?
Sorry, are you asking?
I think he was asking you. Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, I see that Syl has her hand up, and Syl and I walked that, and I think maybe Chris and I also walked that. And Syl actually suggested that be used as a potential bailout trail for mountain bikers. However, Chris sort of nuked that idea because it ends up in the Ashland, whatever that development is that's up there. Basically, it drains right into this one house. And he said no to that suggestion.
Syl, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah. Yeah, I went up there and looked at that with Torsten and Chris, and I didn't hear about that part of maybe what I suggested. There was at least one thing that was, and I don't know if which bailout it was, but there was a road visible from the trail. And we started to go down, I think, to the end of it. Yeah, it was steep. But one of the things we talked about was that you could see one from the other. And at that time, we were thinking that was a downside. But if it was a one-way type, one up and one down, you know, maybe that wouldn't be an issue. I also remember that because the treatment plant was going in, I thought that they did bring in a geologist not too terribly long ago. And and the geologists talked about what was possible there. And I don't know much what happened beyond that.
We can check that out as well. Luke or Casey, do you have any follow-up, or should we go to Luke?
I would say to Priscilla just that from RVMBA's standpoint, it wouldn't be a concern to see the other trail. That's just where we stand. I know other people might feel differently, but just to follow up on that comment.
Okay. Thanks. Luke?
And no, I don't know that. I think at the time when we were looking at it, it was like as an alternative maybe, and that was like, it's hard to get people to use one trail when they can see another. But as far as just being able to see it, especially if it was a one-way thing, I don't think anybody saw that was a problem, but it sounds like it's at the lower end where it's more of a problem of where it comes out.
Okay.
Hey, Luke.
Yeah, my comment was just, I do remember from the Forest Lands Commission talking about that, the northern bailout that that's not one of the two highlighted in color, but talking about that. And I know Marty Main, yeah, right there, expressed a lot of concern, just as Torsten said, about the development. The development doesn't show on this map, but from what I recall, it's actually fairly close, and that drainage really does feed right into it. So I remember that being just a non-starter with Chris and Marty, and I'm not sure what kind of mitigation measures could be used, or if any, to make that a potential possibility. But I do recall a lot of resistance from both Chris and Marty on that idea, just strictly due to the potential landslide or slope failure or mass wasting of that drainage area if we had another rain on snow event like the 97 flood or that kind of a thing. So not sure if they were kind of worst case scenarioing it or what, but that was talked about extensively. And I think that is why the trail as it is Lower Wonder was kind of placed where it was, if I'm remembering correctly, or Torsten or Jeff, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Well, let's go to Jeff, since he hasn't commented on this one yet.
I'm just agreeing with that, Luke, and I spoke to Chris about a month ago. I was in there talking to him about Firewise, and he brought that up. And then the 97 flood, there was a landslide that came down from that drainage, and it went like Torsten said, right into this house. And like the corner of this house is built out into a draw that's right above the road down below part of the Ashland Creek development. And Chris mentioned it a month ago or so in the same way that he's always mentioned it. It was like very unstable area up there. So I just thought I'd throw that in, that he's still thinking that way about that particular area. And I know that he got a geology report for that whole interface from, I believe it was Bill Hicks that did the study back when they were looking at doing fuels reduction through that area years ago.
So quick question. I don't know if people's hands are raised, I'm sorry, but is there any data that you guys know of that talks about the impact of trails on hillside stability? Because I know that there have been national documents, and they're not always dealing with what the soil we're dealing with, that have come out from the BLM or the Forest Service. I'm not sure which one, that have almost shown a negligible effect of a well-constructed trail on a slope with not the best stability. I was just curious. I'm surprised they got building permits to put the house there actually after, if it's going to slide without trails there. So, but that's a moot point, I guess. I was just curious if anyone knew, we're talking a lot about the impact of trails on hillside stability, and I'm wondering what the science or consensus is around that.
Crickets. Jeff, your hand went up again.
Well, I know that I believe the geology reports that have been obtained in the past, some of them have been site specific for trails and the impact, and like the one in the Banders or in the Bronca unit on the other side of the canyon. I believe that study was done in order to determine whether how much fuel reduction should be done or not, and not necessarily trails. But I know there's also is a huge liability that's always been talked about, that you don't want to go in and do something that's gonna, add to a problem area and then have something happen later on.
Right.
So
Right.
they've been very careful about that.
Okay. Sil, is your hand up again or okay?
Yeah, it is. And I understand about the geology and that it is extremely sensitive. Here, it's our watershed and the potential for slides. But I'd also like to point out that in the Bronca area, on the Red Queen Trail, they avoided doing fuels work for a long time because of, the erosiveness and the risk there. But I think eventually they decided, a bad fire in there would be even worse. So they very carefully did some fuels work and, with some intensive on site while it was going. And I think they had a successful prescribed burning going on in there and pile burning going on there last spring, I believe, or maybe it was last fall. I can't remember. So I hope that we can think outside the box. And, if we just can't do it, without hurting the resources, well, then, we can't do it. And I could easily accept that. However, if we think outside the box and think of, how to do those trails in this difficult area, maybe there's still some possibility, but it might take a lot more creativity.
Right.
Okay. Luke?
So there's my pitch.
Yeah, just a quick question for the group. Not sure if anyone knows, but do either of the trails, it looks like the blue trail number 2 crosses one draw twice and kind of enters to the south another draw, and then that pink trail number 1 kind of follows a draw. Are those dry draws, or do those ever run water? Are they like intermittent stream courses or seasonal ephemerals? Curious about that, if anyone knows.
I'm more familiar with this magenta one because it's visible, and this is actually, to me, is more like a low grade saddle. These are definitely just to this is the high point right here, and then it goes down on this side and down on this side. I don't know the answer to your question about these draws here.
Commissioner Eldridge? Still on mute. Sorry, I know.
Thank you for giving the heads up. So to piggyback off what Sil just said, I'm still I see that like we know these trails very well, and there's a lot of specifics about, is this possible? Is that possible? And I guess I came to this thinking that we were looking at, we were trying to make some recommendations based on conceptual ideas. Like, can we all agree that bike and pedestrian traffic should be separated on Alice in Wonderland, and that it is possible, and that it will take this process, like in the RVMBA Trails Sustainable, in this plan, it says like, this is the process, here are the stakeholders together, here's the things, this is how we're going to figure this out, and that's going to be a longer process. But I mean, I think my thought was that, we can agree on shared goals and feasibility, and say, yes, like we all think that a Lower Wonder bailout trail, or the possibility of a loop for kids during Ashland Devo coaching, for example, which I was out there a week ago, is a good idea. And we think it's possible, but we want APRC to put together, to shepherd this process and like determine if that actually is. Is it our job to determine that this is like 100% possible, and APRC, this is how we want you to do it? Because I don't think we can do that in this period.
I think, well, let me just say this. I think our job here is to look at the recommendations. If there's alternatives that come out of these recommendations to meet what the overarching goal is of the recommendations, then those would come to APRC. And then the commissioners would have to decide whether or not or when to do them. But maybe I'm not understanding your question all the way, Leslie.
I think that each one of these proposals has a many details and many parts that would take a very long time to sort of come to consensus on.
Okay, so I think on each one of these, the group could say, yeah, something needs to be done here. Maybe we don't know exactly what it is today, but something needs to be done, and we could move forward with that information. We don't have to get to the point where we have engineered drawings for this process.
I think that is helpful, because I think that's what I have, that's sort of what I was trying to say, like what level of detail are these recommendations in? And, you know, I do think like all the comments are valuable. I'm not sure exactly the type of recommendations that we envision coming out of this process.
I would hope that at the end of the process, each one of these you could say, we recommend that you proceed with this, but maybe do this or do that, or we recommend that this be looked into further. And if there's some that don't get looked into further, there should be a stated reason why. We recommend that this not be looked into further. It's not necessary, or it would be too invasive on the existing trail systems, or the geology. Funding wise, it'd be, just a big project, and, things like that, or it's just not right. But hopefully, I think the RVMBA put these together in good faith, and I hope the group would look at each one of these in good faith and say, well, what's behind this? And look at the full proposal. Why is this necessary? Is it necessary? And if it's not this that's been proposed, could something else be accomplished? With the wealth of knowledge that we have here, I would hope that, everybody can put their heads together and come to consensus at the end of the day, and that everybody agrees, based on the site visits and discussion that has here with we have here with all of the recommendations. So
That's helpful. Thanks, Michael.
If no one has any more questions, I'm ready to move on to the next one. I'd like to get through two more of these, hopefully. Does that sound feasible if we go to 4:10, 4:15-ish, or is that a no, Michael?
Commissioner Lott?
Yeah, I'll need to leave at 4 o'clock.
Yeah, we're going to end at 4.
That is what we're set up to do.
Okay.
Yeah, and I already feel like, we probably should have postponed this so that Chris could be here. I think we're missing, when we're talking about somebody who has the authority to nuke a trail option like Torsten, and they're not in the room, I feel like maybe we're missing a big piece of our committee. So I say we end at 4 o'clock. We go as far as we can and end at 4 o'clock.
Okay, I'd like to move on to the Siskiyou Mountain Park low angle loop trails. Gonna go for it, and then we can discuss. So the idea here is beginner trails and increase user experience, and the secondary would be, trail sustainability, environmental impact, because it would involve decommissioning some current user created trails, as well as a possible tourism boost. This zoomed out map, because my other map is really zoomed in. The area we're talking about is right against the property line, kind of in this zone here. I'm going to go back to plan. Oops. So this area is a really some of the most gentle terrain that I've found in the watershed without water issues. It's all out too, which is really nice for fire hazard. As far as I understand it, just a really quick, this is showing the Epstein property, which is where these words are. It's also showing a weird kind of jog from the map I used. Every map I've seen, this line actually extends here, and that's what I used when I walked this. So I'm going off the presumption that this is all part of Siskiyou Mountain Park. So the idea here is to create a climb trail, which is denoted with this blue line, and then it turns to turquoise. Progressively longer and more difficult downhill trails. And when I say difficult, I'm talking like this downhill one would be for brand new beginners and strider bikes. Talking a couple, very low angle, suitable for kids who've never been on dirt before. And then this one would be a little bit, more maybe like a more slight grade or rollable tabletops, maybe a little bit bigger berms to carry a little more speed, something you'd work towards. And then this one right here, number 3, would be more along the lines of like a Caterpillar trail or something like that for comparison. This would be loopable, which would be really nice because you can get several hundred feet of climbing here. It's also at an area away from Mike Uthoff and White Rabbit Trail, where it sees more hiking use. And the biggest issue with this is access, because you'd be coming in off Park Street and parking along the dirt roads or the flatter roads there. Or I mean, there is a multi-use way out of the Ordson Creek area, or Ordson Todd area, but I don't believe most people would use that. I think most people would come in the long fire road just north of this point. These terminate kind of where, if you know where kids like to build forts in this area, that's kind of where I envision these trails terminating. Some of these lines in here are the user created trails I'm talking about. There's a lot of crisscrossing. That's something that along in this process we could address. And if they were viewed by the committee or whoever as a net positive by getting rid of those, that's something we could talk about. But yeah, I'd love to take any feedback on this one.
Just quick question for me, if that's okay. So that area down there towards Epstein's property, those are all user created trails, and those would go away and be replaced by your proposed trails, or there would be a mix, or what?
I think we would be open to doing whatever would be the best environmental impact. If obviously, I think it behooves the city and the land managers to not have user created trails. So if getting rid of those was a component of putting new trails in, we would be 100% supportive of that. I have not cataloged what's there and what isn't in terms of what we would want to possibly get rid of. That's just something I wanted to throw out there as a possible thing we could do to improve that environmental sustainability piece of not having a bunch of random trails.
Because there's where the DH1 is, I think that's where that little kind of what the kids call like a waterfall, the water kind of goes down the slick rock. And so like would that
right here, right?
Yeah. Would that eliminate the possibility then to make a loop hike out of that? Would it become an out and back? Because I see towards the east side, it looks like the climbing trail, the kind of light blue, or no, up farther north. Yeah, that it seems to then, would that then replace the pedestrian trail and eliminate the loop, or am I not understanding?
Sorry. I think it's unclear because I probably kept my Gaia going. But this is a big fire road, big wide open fire road, and that wouldn't be replaced it's currently open to bikes and hikers. And so there'd be no, in my opinion, there'd be no effect to hikers coming up to do that loop. Thanks for that question, because I can see how that could be unclear. But the climb trail, and I can send a new one of these that's more clear. The climb trail would actually start over here. So this whole area would just be fire road, and then this DH2 would be well above the fire road and not impact hikers.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. That's helpful.
Okay, sorry. I don't know if anybody noticed I was gone, but I was gone for a second. So, are you finished with that one, Casey?
Yeah, I'm taking questions right now. And I also wanted to just note that this stops before the gradient increases significantly right here.
Okay.
But any other questions or feedback on this?
All right,
one? Because
Leslie.
I'm actually really excited about this one in terms of I think it's maybe one that we can just have some discussion, and if there's no major concerns, get like a vote on it, or not today, but just in general.
Yeah, just
Okay, Leslie.
as a parent who has spent years chasing and pushing and riding balance bikes and stuff with my boys, and they're now riding all the intermediate trails. This is, and as a Ashland Devo coach, this would be a huge benefit. This type of thing would be incredible for our community and for the kiddos and for beginners. So that's all I got.
Okay, Rick.
Yeah, I was listening to that. You're talking about, Casey, there's a fire road kind of to the right of the red arrow that says DH2. Yeah. So there's a trail that a new proposed trail that's almost, it's parallel to it, and it looks like in some places even covers it. But for me, if we're talking about trying to be, I don't know what sustainable really means in terms of bike trails, but if we're really trying to reduce erosion, and that fire trail is going to remain, why wouldn't that section just be on the fire trail, so there wouldn't have to be any new trail built? So you have like two trails, parallel trails is more erosive than one.
I think this is where my GPS is getting confusing. See the line my cursor is on? Pretend that blue trail doesn't exist. And I'll send an updated version, but my intention was not to have a parallel trail right here. Now the one above it, that's about 100 feet above it. And this DH2 trail would serve a different purpose. So I think that we would need to keep this one here. This bottom one would be more for hikers and for climbing traffic. And that would ensure that bikers, especially new bikers, weren't traveling down fire road where people were climbing up or hiking up. But I'm sorry that this part right here is unclear for people.
Okay, Luke. And if anybody else has any questions, get your hand up now, because we're going to end it after this one. Not after Luke, but after the questions on this item.
Yeah, just real quick. I thought I recall from Forest Lands Commission meetings that there was some kind of maybe handshake deal with Dr. Epstein about how the trails near his property were represented. Jason or Jeff, you may know more about that, but I'm just curious to know if this would work with maybe what was agreed to with him there to the south. And I don't know if it was certain trails, just how they were advertised or not advertised, but Jason or Jeff, do you know anything about that?
Jason, you up? Or Torsten?
Yeah, I know that and Jeff can speak to this because he was here a lot longer before me even, but we try not to put trails right near his property line so we don't lead pedestrians and mountain bikers onto private property inadvertently. So we try to keep them off a certain distance, or keep trails away from that property line a certain distance, just out of respect to private property. And we try to do that on not just this property, but all properties. So that would be a concern. And I guess the other one is in Siskiyou Mountain Park, you know, I know you know this, but Southern Oregon Land Conservancy has an easement on this property as well. So I would like to bring them in, maybe Christy Mergenthaler or somebody from there, and get their thoughts on this as well, because they will have an input for this property. And then my last concern is, and maybe you have it in your packet here, but maintenance on all these extra trails it would be a big concern of mine as well.
Okay, thanks, Jason. Torsten, did you take your hand down? You disappeared off my screen.
Took my hand down. I was going to comment about the trails in proximity to Epstein's property, but Jason took care of that.
Okay, sounds good. I'm going to assume that Luke, your question got answered with Jason. If there's more, we can follow up on that. Any other questions really quick on this one, or Casey, any last words really quick?
Yeah, really quick. This area is fenced. There's a big wooden fence. I don't remember how far it goes up. It might run the whole property up to Lizard, but there would be very little question about what was private or public. I know that doesn't address the question of how close you build the trails, but you would not have people straying over inadvertently along this line.
Okay, Ian?
Yeah, just to comment on that, like we have several trails that run along the property. Like Red Queen has a massive section that just runs right adjacent to that fence line, up higher on the ridge there. And so just by, you know, people seem to have been trained to know that that is private property on the other side of that. And if you follow Red Queen, you know, until you get to uphill from the White Rabbit Trailhead, people are very familiar with that fence line. And so having these other trails adjacent to that, it doesn't seem like it would be too different from what we have in our existing trail system.
Okay, Jeffrey.
I've got one more thing too after Jeff.
Okay, Jeff, I got you.
Okay, yeah, well, first I wanted to say I believe that the property line that Casey referred to in the beginning, it looks like it zigzags over up there. I believe that's a straight line. That property line is just a straight line that goes straight up the hill. Yeah, it looks right on that map. It's a straight line, and we've been up and down in there doing fuel reduction lots of times. And a little bit of the history of the Epstein, there used to be a big problem with according to Epstein, that mountain bikes were coming down through his property, and they came right out on that old road, fire road above the waterfall. And there used to be a dumping off problem of bikes from there right down to the waterfall, down the steep, before we blocked that off. And as Torsten had mentioned, I think it was Torsten and Luke had both mentioned that Epstein was initially a big supporter of creating the White Rabbit Trail to be a legitimate connection from through town, through the interface to town. And part of the hope was to take that, to lessen that cut and through problem that was on his property. And he even contributed some financially to help in the beginning of White Rabbit. And also to speak to Jason's mentioning about SOLC conservation easement. All through the years managing that property as stewards of it, we tried very hard to comply with that. And we part of the spirit of the conservation easement was to preserve and maintain that property as a preserve, as a nature preserve. And there's certain things are written into that, the easement. There's one in Ords and Todd Woods as well, that calls for us to try to maintain that kind of a place in there. And that area has been used by multiple hikers and all kinds of different trail users. and conservationists and schools. Lots of kids and classrooms go up there to do studies. So I'm just trying to kind of paint a little bit of a picture for everybody here about what it's been in the past. And White Rabbit Trail originally was developed as a multi-use trail, and before downhill biking came about and became popular. So it was actually developed originally as a single track and multi-use trail, and back in the early 90s. So it was not designed to be, I know we're talking about White Rabbit right now, not the loop proposal down there, but that's what it was originally designed for. And there's a sensitive fisher population that's been monitored on that property. And so we've had several different elements to try to manage that property. It's been very responsibility and a challenge to try to manage it for recreation and nature and all of the different facets. So that all of those things have always been part of what we concerned ourselves with when we try to weigh out these kinds of things in the past, whether trails or races should be allowed in certain areas.
Okay, we need to move on. We're over time. Jeff, I appreciate the background. Jason, you got 30 seconds.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say is Ian was speaking to up at Red Queen, where we have trails right along the property lines there. There are some cases where property owners are okay with that, and some cases where they're not, and they've asked us to not put trails such as Epstein did. So, and yes, the fence, there is a fence up there, but it doesn't mean that people don't cross the fence and go on the private property. Not necessarily mountain bikers, because they'd have to pick their bike up and throw it over, but it does lead hikers in onto private property that they don't really care if there's a fence or not. So those, as Jeff was saying, those are all things that we have to think about rather than, you know, just building trails. There's a lot of aspects that we look at.
All right, thanks, Jason. Okay, it's the last call, and then I will go over kind of some follow-up things that we will do in email. Okay, so we're going to send the contact info out to everybody. Is everyone okay with that? Everybody getting your email addresses? And I don't know if we have everybody's phone numbers or not, but at least email addresses. I didn't see any no's. The dates to go on a field trip, Casey, if you can just email us, we'll be happy to be the conduit, but we're not setting up those field trips. Those will have to be done on your own so that they're not public meetings. If anybody knows of any plans that have been done previously that are in the same area of what we're discussing, and it would be helpful to do GPS overlays on those, let us know and we'll try to find them, or if you have them, let us know. And then I think that's it for the follow-up. And so if you guys, and oh, the other thing we'll do is we will email you about setting up the next meeting, and we'll, like we said, we'll turn it around as quick as we can. We don't need to wait long periods in between. It's really up to you when you want to meet, when everybody can get together. So I appreciate everybody's willingness to be on this committee and being here today. Is there any last words from anyone? All right.
Yeah, wait.
Still.
I just have a couple questions. It would be helpful for Casey to put some sort of, you know, the larger context map with you are here with the smaller individual trails. You did that on one of them. And so, like, for example, on the last one, it'd be good to see where does Park Street really come in, or things like that. Would be helpful. And then I'd also just like to ask if there's somebody like recording some of these comments that are really, really good and helpful. So we have Casey's report in writing, and then a lot of people, like when Jeff pointed out some of the historic things, when we're deciding, we'll want to like go, oh yeah, what Jeff said. But
yeah, We're doing minutes of this meeting and it's being recorded as well.
Cool. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and what we do with these committee meetings is we also give the link out to people so they can watch them anytime they want as well. So people will be able to see this meeting in its rerun state down the road. So, okay, best to everybody. We will be in touch through email probably tomorrow.
Thank you,
Okay.
everybody.
Thank
Night,
you.
everyone.